Today, we're exploring one of the biggest questions LGBTQ retirees face. Where the heck am I going to retire?
Spoiler alert, your options range from staying right where you are to buying a beach bungalow in Portugal, which would be very nice, or recreating the Golden Girls for yourself in a queer co-housing community, complete with cheesecake at night, of course, right?
Right. So this is Queer Money episode 553, and today we're sharing exactly how you can figure that out. Now on with the show.
Capital One Auto Navigator does more than just auto financing. We're here to help you find a car you love, too. Shop millions of cars from thousands of dealers nationwide. Research your favorite makes and models. Explore dealers near you and more. All on Auto Navigator.
All right, in last week's episode, we covered step 3, which is to figure out how to fund your retirement and to break your retirement options up into basic, happy, and fabulous buckets. Today, and that was a good starting point, but today we're going to tackle one of the most expensive line items in each of those buckets, and that's, where the heck do I retire?
Yeah.
Right. So today we're going to talk about the various living arrangements that you can consider that might be optimal for both your personal and social life, but also for your finances.
Exactly. So we have 7 that we're going to share with you because these are the 7 most common. The first one is to retire in place, which I think a lot of folks consider, especially because more often than not, either you live in a home that's paid off or is nearly paid off, or you already know what your expenses are going to be because you've been living in this location for quite a while. So it's probably the most, I know the detail about this place, so I'm just going to stay here kind of way of thinking about retiring for folks.
Yeah. And I think that sense of familiarity is also another reason why people oftentimes just retire in place, because they know the neighborhood, they know their community, they know where to go to the grocery store or where to get their martinis.
Friends group, all sorts of reasons to retire in place.
Number 2 is to retire in place and snowbird. So you're kind of being a hybrid. And in each situation, whether you're retiring in place or you're snowbirding, you can be either a renter or an owner, depending upon what's most amicable for your situation. Typically, snowbirders are trying to escape the cold during the wintertime and go to warmer environments. And all of us know people who go to Florida or go to Arizona to escape the cold, but it doesn't exactly have to be that way for you. You might actually like it when it's colder. So you might in the winter times go to some place that's actually colder, or like to go in the mountains or like to travel abroad. You basically pick what dynamic you want to create. And you primarily have 2 homes. One that would be sort of your retirement in place, and your one place where you're sort of snowbirding or traveling. The nice thing about this is essentially, again, as with number 1, you're able to be a little bit more predictable about what your expenses will be from year to year,
especially if you've lived in that location for a while. Number 3 is to move to a retirement destination of choice. And this seems to be the ideal dream that most of us think about, right? I'm going to retire in Palm Springs, or I'm going to retire in Las Cruces, New Mexico, or somewhere like that, right? We have these dreams of these destinations. And so this is a common one a lot of us start thinking about. There's oftentimes also international destinations that many people are thinking about, especially right now, as retirement costs in the United States seem to be going up every single year. So places like Portugal, Spain, and Uruguay are hot topic destinations for retirees, especially for LGBTQ retirees. We actually spoke with Mark Goldstein of the Where Do Gays Retire podcast on episode 504 of this podcast. And he kind of opened up to us this idea that there are a lot of different locations. And so that's what his podcast is talking about. So it would suggest you check out his podcast, especially for the list of destinations that he has interviewed folks from, to see if you can gather some information to see if any of these locations are where you would like to retire.
Number 4 is co-housing. So what this is typically smaller communities where individuals or families or couples own their own home, but there are some aspects of the community that they share. Oftentimes there's a communal place for people to eat or a swimming pool. Oftentimes there's a community garden area that you can use, and number of the variables can change from location to location. But what it basically offers is sort of a more of a sense of community where you get a lot of mutual support. Yeah. Examples for LGBTQ plus folks would be the Village Hearth in Durham, North Carolina. It's designed for LGBTQ plus individuals and allies, and has that community feel where you own your own place. You're not sharing room or a house with somebody, but you're all kind of living together with a certain sense of purpose or community.
Yeah. And just keep in mind, not all of these co-housing are tiny homes or mobile homes, right? Some of these are actually full-size homes. I think there's one in New Mexico that's like this.
Yeah, and those are several $100,000 homes there.
Right.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One, N.A., member FDIC.
Number 5 is home sharing. Now, when we oftentimes think about home sharing, we usually think about the Golden Girls, right?
Yep.
There's also a new show coming out called Mid-Century Modern, starring Nathan Lane and Matt Baumer. That's produced by Ryan Murphy. So keep your ears out or eyes out for that. That definitely. This is typically where we see several people sharing a home, which can be either intergenerational with individual retirees of different ages, or sometimes everyone is about the same age. There are sites that can help you facilitate these kinds of arrangements. Silver Nest is one of those. The other thing to keep in mind here is that if you own a home that you think is maybe too expensive or too big for you to retire in, but you also may not have enough money to retire the way you would like, this is an option for you, inviting individuals into your home to rent from you, adding to your income in retirement.
This was exactly Blanche Devereaux's situation.
Exactly.
Number 6 is life plan communities. So these are also known as retirement communities. You're probably quite familiar with these, but very often they're like 55 and up communities. And oftentimes people are together for particular purposes, right? They have some sense of they're looking for some sort of social aspect to their lives, or they are all golfers and there's a golf course there, or they like to fish and there's a pond there and whatnot. Some examples for that might be Wilton Manors in Florida, and also, if you dare to brave the area, the Villages, which we've heard from several LGBTQ plus folks that they do live in the Villages. Although after today's storm, that might not be the case.
Yeah, exactly. Number 7 is continuous care retirement communities. Now, a continuous care retirement community is really a community that's set up to allow you to move into the community and to be able to live out your life in that community. So it offers anything from independent living to assisted living to actually nursing care all in one location. And it really allows you to stay in that location. One of the drawbacks to these, and you really want to think these through, is that oftentimes you're paying for services, especially early on in retirement, that you may not be using. So for example, you may be paying for the access to healthcare services that you don't necessarily need, but that is just automatically added into your monthly dues for that location. So be careful with the costs of continuous care retirement communities.
And to answer probably one of the most common questions that we get when we talk about living arrangements is, are there LGBTQ plus focused communities? For each of the niches that we just discussed, there are LGBTQ plus focused options. Most of the above that we talked about do have gay specific locations, such as co-housing, life plan communities, continuous care retirement communities. Examples would be Birds of a Feather in New Mexico, which I think is maybe what we had just referenced a little bit earlier.
It was.
And then there's also A Place for Us in Ohio. And there are only about, according to our last count, 22 or so of these types of LGBTQ plus specific communities. So they're not nearly as plentiful as we'd like them to be. But these options are out there. And if you happen to be a multimillionaire or multi-billionaire, maybe you can create one of these communities and add to that list.
Exactly. Just for some resources for folks, on episode 470, we did share 10 great gay retirement communities that are a variety of the ones we've talked about here. And also on episode 438 of the podcast, we had Dr. Sarah Zeff-Geber on to talk about her book, Essential Retirement Planning for Solo Agers. In her book, as well as in the podcast episode, she did talk about a variety of these kinds of living arrangements. I would definitely suggest both listening to that episode, but getting her book to help inform yourself about what these kinds of arrangements are like and the legalities around some of them.
Yeah, her book is great. I highly recommend it to everybody. So that's your 4th assignment. Pick your basic, happy, and fabulous retirement living situation. Start to do your research. Where are they in the world? What is it actually going to cost? Try to find the hardest numbers that you can find, and start to figure out where do these fit into your buckets of basic, happy, and fabulous. Then share your questions, thoughts, or comments wherever you're catching this particular podcast. Or if you want, email us at info@queermoneypodcast.com or simply reply to this week's Queer Money newsletter.
The mission of Queer Money is to financially empower the LGBTQ plus community. Join us in thanking Capital One for supporting that mission.
Thank you for joining us for another episode. Remember to sign up for this week's Queer Money newsletter with the link in your podcast player or the QR code right here on the screen to get the resources mentioned in today's episode and a link to an exhaustive article on LGBTQ plus retirement communities available on queermoneypodcast.com.
And then come back next Thursday when we share the 10 best states for LGBTQ folks who may be thinking about retirement. Until next time, stay fabulous.
Bye.
Bye.